Hello, and welcome back to the Bright Light Wellness YouTube channel and the the Bright Light Wellness Substack. Used to be formerly known as the Healing with Homeopathy Substack. Now it's Bright Light Wellness Substack. Today, I really want to do a video on a really important remedy that I actually just took myself. I have never thought of this remedy for me ever, and I probably wouldn't have prescribed it to myself or for myself. And that's why even homeopaths have homeopaths because we don't always see ourselves, objectively. We don't see what we need. So I think it's really important to chat about that. Because first of all, I want to say as a healer myself, don't think I don't go through things like because I absolutely do. And every single healer or person who's in the healing arts or person that you think is an influencer or you're looking up to, they go through things too, and they have challenging times just as everybody else, right? And we need support through those challenging times too. So I do want you to know we're not immune to things happening to us and struggles, and negative thoughts or, things that come up in our field or patterns that still need to be worked on. We're not immune to these things. So the remedy I want to chat with, or the remedy spotlight today I want to talk about is Ignatia. And you might have heard Ignatia before for grief. It is one of our main grief remedies in homeopathy. Main grief remedies are Ignatia, phosphoric acid, okay, of nat myrrh, of course, causticum, staph aureus. Pulsatilla is absolutely a grief remedy in my opinion. I've used it on myself for grief as well. So these are some good main grief remedies. And Ignatia is a really good remedy for grief, shock or emotional contractions, basically, or contradiction, I would say. And I personally I'm not going to be sharing about what the situation was that caused me such grief and shock. But I just went through a situation where I was dealing with a lot of grief and shock, and Ignatia was super helpful. And like I said, I wouldn't have picked it for myself. So I have a big appreciation for Ignatia now because I have personally just lived through that state and found it to be a super supportive remedy. Um, so we don't want to think of remedies as like a list of symptoms in the Materia Medica. That's the book where we'd find out all the symptoms that a remedy could cause and cure because homeopathy works with like cures like. So they cause the same symptoms that they cure. Um, I want to think about what it feels like to have, I want you to think about what it feels like to have your heart shattered, your nervous system extremely overwhelmed, and your emotions so intense that they feel impossible to contain. And that's exactly how I felt. I had such intense emotions that I could not contain them. And I have just went through a period in my life that I'm still going through, honestly, right now. I'm actually using gelsemium now for more anticipatory anxiety, which is another great remedy for when you feel. I have a video on gelsemium, I believe. Go back. It's when you feel paralyzed by anticipation, and I actually have felt that recently. I felt very paralyzed, like, okay, what do I do next? That's how much the fear and the anxiety was taking over my life. And I was like paralyzed with it. Like, okay, just go to the bathroom. Okay, now just go and make your breakfast. Okay, like go wake up your child for dinner, for breakfast for school. Like I had to be that slow about things to just get through the day instead of just going through the motions. I had to actually like think about what to do because I was paralyzed by anxiety and anticipation of what would happen. And gelsemium has been helpful there. But I first used Ignatia. And again, both of these remedies were prescribed by my homeopath because I would not think of these remedies for myself, honestly. Um, at this moment, when I used Ignatia, I was consumed by grief and shame, very emotionally raw, fragile, and completely destabilized, honestly. I was desperately wanting support. Ignatia cannot always be that way. Ignatia could also really isolate and want to be alone and not be able to cry in front of other people. Ignatia in the Materia Medica, especially in the old time books, is linked to hysteria. Like the person is just it's usually a women's remedy, and they would say that the woman was hysterical. And I was literally hysterical. So that's why it made sense to me that this remedy was prescribed. Like I could not get my bearings. I was just like out of control, crying and in the shame and in the grief and the disappointment. Ignatia is huge for disappointment, disappointment at yourself, disappointment in others. Ignatia can be very idealistic and be very disappointed when things don't go the ideal way. I think this is a great example of an Ignatia probably layer in me. I think I've talked about this, how I've always hated my birthday, because I'd always want it, like I'd have this perception of how it was supposed to go. Like, oh, it's supposed to be great. It's your birthday. Like everything's supposed to go great. And my birthday is Halloween. So it was never, it went well. And it was always a chaotic day as a teacher, as a mom, even as a child. It was always, I think I got egged one year on my birthday. Like it was just always chaotic and I was always disappointed. And that's Ignatia. Like that disappointment, that grief is kind of it is an example of an Ignatia state because they are deeply idealistic and have this idealization about relationships, about how things should go. And when they don't go that way, they get very disappointed and they get emotional. Anyway, so I had just gone through this very emotional experience with a lot of shame, grief, still processing a lot, still going through it. And Ignatia was just really supportive. So I definitely felt very exposed, very vulnerable, very deeply concerned about what others thought of me, desperately wanted someone to understand what I was going through, to reassure me and tell me everything was going to be okay. And this part of Ignatia is not always talked about. The longing for support. You won't always see that in Ignatia. It's actually not the typical Ignatia personality. A lot of times they will be averse consolation and want to be alone. But it doesn't always mean, like, I wouldn't rule it out, is my point. I wouldn't rule Ignatia out if the person wants a lot of support because it was very supportive to me and I wanted tons of support. So the Ignatia person can also like have this kind of back and forth of desperately craving comfort and understanding and connection. When it's offered, they might reject it and pull away or feel like nobody really understands. That's that kind of painful contradiction with Ignatia. I don't think that I had felt that. I felt like I didn't deserve the support and the love and all of that. So it's hitting on some deeper wounds in me that I'm always still working on. Like I'm not enough and I'm not good enough and I'm not perfect enough. It's hitting on my carcinosin probably as well, which is going to need some support after I get through all of this anticipatory anxiety that I'm also struggling with. So there's a lot of things. This video will probably come out after all of these things have already shifted in my life. But there's been a lot of things that I'm silently going through that I don't always share on social media because there are some things that need to be said and there are some things that need to remain personal in someone's life, right? Um, but Ignatia can have this please help me and please leave me alone at the same time. Those two things happening at the same time. And feelings can exist simultaneously. In my case, I just wanted someone to help me and support me. But and that can be other remedies that love support, like other remedies that love support and consolation and reassurance are pulsatilla, are phosphorus, are arsenicum. So these are some other remedies to consider when somebody really wants support. But I just wanted to tell you right now, I wouldn't rule out Ignatia because it can still be supportive. So Ignatia is often prescribed after grief, heartbreak, like relationship heartbreak. It's in our materia medica, we call it ailments from disappointed love. Some sort of betrayal, some sort of rejection, some sort of emotional shock, sudden disappointment, humiliation. Just like staph aureus can be worse humiliation. There can be shame, loss of identity. The person feels emotionally overwhelmed and unable to integrate what has happened. And that I did feel very emotionally overwhelmed and just unable to like really fully process the grief and the shame. Like the processing it was tough for me. The nervous system is stuck in the shock of the experience. So it is a good remedy for shock. That's exactly how it felt. I was stuck in this like shock. I can't believe this has happened. I can't believe I'm going through this. Like that's how I felt. And Ignatia did help shift those things. It helped, it didn't take away the full experience because I'm still going through the experience. What it did is it toned it down. It toned down the emotional charge, it toned down the grief, the shock of it all. It made me not this hysterical mess that was like couldn't get through the day. Um, so anyway, Anisha can have, like I said, this emotional contradiction. So they want support but push people away, cry intensely, then become composed, feel angry and heartbroken at the same time, longing for connection, yes, isolates themselves, feels emotionally numb one moment, then overwhelmed the next. These rapid shifts often reflect a nervous system struggling to process intense emotional pain, basically. So you want to think of Ignatia for acute grief. The grief feels fresh, alive. The person might cry frequently, hysterically. Ignatia can have hysterical crying, feels devastated by loss, replays events repeatedly in their mind. Ignatia is also listed for ailments from worry. So you do want to consider that if they're worrying so much, feels unable to move forward, like that. I actually felt paralyzed, like I don't know what to do. Like Ignatia really helped a lot. And sometimes in acute situations of stress, we need to use more than one remedy. So now I'm using gelsemium because I'm anticipating what will happen. Emotional shock, something that happened and shook their world. So it could be used for a death of a loved one, a divorce, a breakup, a public humiliation, a betrayal, an unexpected diagnosis, right? A loss of a dream or an identity that you felt tied to. Ignatia states also contain an element of shame, so they can blame themselves, feel embarrassed by their emotions, feel exposed when vulnerable, and worry excessively about how they're perceived. I was doing all of that, so Ignatia was really helpful for all of that. Underneath the emotional turmoil is often a profound desire to be seen and understood. So they may want reassurance, want someone to listen, want emotional safety, want validation, but that they struggle to receive the support they need. They have trouble taking it in. Okay. Physically, how does Ignatia manifest? Let's talk about that. The body frequently carries grief in the lungs, right? You've heard of that in traditional Chinese medicine, right? Grief is in the lungs, held in the lungs, and Ignatia helps move that grief. So common symptoms might feel like a lump in the throat, something like is trying to come up and out, but they can't fully express it. There is frequent sighing, which is a symptom of mine in general, but it was so glaring when I had this emotional grief and shock and shame that it was happening. So the sigh is the way the body is trying to process and let it out. They'll have tightness in their chest. There can be insomnia. There can be headaches, digestive upset. There can be muscle tension or muscle spasms or twitching anywhere in the body. So you can see a lot of that. So it's the body is expressing what the emotions are not able to process because they are, even though I was expressing, it was like, because some Ignatias and some people with grief issues like Nat Murs, Nat Mur and Ignatia can be tricky to distinguish. And I'll talk about that, but they can kind of hold it all in, like they can't let it out. Um, I was letting it out, but not able to resolve it and move through it. Like I couldn't complete the cycle of moving through it, and I'm still working through that. I probably will take Ignatia again at some point. So Ignatia is the main remedy, one of our main remedies from ailments from grief, like I said, with nat mur, phosphoric acid, and also staphysagria and causticum. Um, some people hold everything inside, try to stay strong, continue to function despite emotional devastation, and emotions become trapped, and the nervous system eventually shows up. It shows up physically, like I was just saying. So Ignatia and Nat Mur are both good for acute grief, raw heartbreak, emotional intensity, hysterical crying. Nat Mur is unlikely to cry in front of others, where Ignatia might. Contradictory emotions, wants support but struggles to receive it. Nat Mur is more your chronic grief, your reserved sadness, your emotional protection. They have all the walls. Nat Mur is walls. Walls, 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 walls. They build the walls around the heart because they don't want to let the grief happen again. More quiet suffering, more long-term disappointment. A simple way to remember it is like Ignatia is like the storm, where Nat Mur is what remains after the storm has passed. So Nat Mur is more the chronic, Ignatia is more the acute. Now, don't take my word for that as full, always how it's going to be, but that's something that is more likely. So what healing looks like, emotional intensity settles, which is exactly what happened for me. I was like, wow, the charge around all this is much less. The grief begins to move through instead of staying stuck. The nervous system calms down, sleep improves. The need to constantly replay the event decreases, and the person can receive support without feeling overwhelmed. So I just want to look at my materia medica a little bit more. Ailments from grief, ailments from disappointment, love, easily hurt and easily offended. This is a symptom that I do have, and it's been hard for me to move. Carcinosin is helpful, but I've never thought of myself as Ignatia and using this remedy, but I'm going to continue to keep it in the back of mind for myself. Sighing, desire to avoid crying. Um, Desire to avoid crying give away to sobbing. So they want to avoid crying, but then they'll go through sobbing, right? They're usually adverse consolation, so they don't want support or it makes them feel worse. They might have jealousy, alternating moods, like laughing to weeping. You'll also see that in pulsatilla. Pulsatilla can have alternating moods. Hysteria or hysterical symptoms. If the grief is really strong, there could be numbness, there could be paralysis. It's the main remedy for fear of birds or chickens or claustrophobia. They're better with travel and they can be suspicious or doubting as well. Ignatia can be worse from eating sweets and have an aversion to sweets. The funny thing is when I went into this state, I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep. No, I could not eat. I didn't eat for a few days. Like every time I just couldn't stomach anything, right? Because it's not, emotions are just not about, we think they're all in our head, but they're connected to our, of everything in our body. Everything is connected in the body, but it was like I couldn't physically digest my emotions, so I couldn't physically digest food, right? And so it was like that was connected. I didn't want to eat anything, but what I could stomach was something more sweet, like a fruit, which is funny because Ignatia can either like typically is aversion to fruit or aversion to sweets, but especially fruit. But you could also just really want fruit, and all I wanted was fruit. Like it was all I could digest. Anyway, they're worse from tobacco smoke or smoky rooms. They like rainy weather. There's twitches, spasms after grief. It's a very hormonal remedy. They like cheese and they either love fruit or hate fruit. Um, they can have dreams of falling. They can have dreams of water. When you dream of water, there's emotional suppression. And I have dreamed of water and travel for years, years. And that's just wanting to escape something and also emotional suppression. So yeah, dreams of water or waves breaking over her, insomnia more commonly, or excessive sleepiness after grief. Anyway, that was what I wanted to tell you about Ignatia. Kind of fun to take a new remedy and just see what amazing work it did. It was literally so healing for me to take Ignatia, and I'm really grateful that it was brought to my attention that I needed it. Um, so Ignatia reminds us that grief can be messy, contradictory, and deeply human. I had to remind myself that I'm a human being having a human experience, and I'm not immune to suffering, and that suffering is going to remind me of the lessons that I still need to learn, what needs to be transmuted, and what I need to work on as a person, what my soul needs, right? And I just want you to know that I think some people think that when you're a healer that you don't have things that you struggle with on a regular basis, and I do. And I think most people do. Because that's part of the human experience. We're not immune to things. We're not living in toxic positivity. We're not doing spiritual bypassing here. We're trying to just work with the body and work with what the body needs in the moment that it needs it. So I know what it feels like to be overwhelmed by grief, shame, heartbreak, desperate longing for support. And that experience gave me a deep respect for this remedy, for sure, and the people who find themselves in this state. So the Ignatia person is not weak. There's someone whose heart has been deeply affected by life. A remedy that helps restore movement when emotions have become stuck, allowing the person to process loss, release, shock, and begin moving forward again. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope it gave you some insights on Ignatia. And for my homeopaths out there, I wanted you to realize that if the person is desiring consolation, please do not rule out Ignatia, especially if they're hysterical and unable to process shock and grief like I was, and sighing a lot. Those were the hysterical and the sighing alone was enough keynotes to give Ignatia to me, but I didn't see it in myself because I was thinking carcinosin. I was thinking arsenicum. I didn't see these remedies for myself because we don't, that's why it's good to have your own homeopath, even as a homeopath, that they can meet with you and talk with you and say, yeah, this is what you need right now. And usually they're probably more spot on. So we know what we need, but sometimes we can't see it within ourselves, right? And Ignatia, I had never taken it, but sorry, you probably didn't hear that. Something just fell. I had never taken Ignatia prior to this, but I had held it to my chest one time when I was sighing a lot. Because sighing a lot is a symptom that I can have that can come up for me a lot. And just going through all that I've gone through in my life with intense grief of all the changes that have happened due to my chronic illness that I dealt with. There's plenty of grief that probably still needs to be shifted and moved. And Ignatia, I'm sure, has done a lot of good work and supported me. Anyway, I am off to do some other things. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Let me know if you ever taken Ignatia, how that's been for you. Let me know if it supported you. Let me know if you have questions about Ignatia. I love chatting about remedies and talking about this. And yeah, sometimes in acute situations with what I was dealing with, remedies need to be shifted. So we'll maybe go back to Ignatia at some point, but I'm certainly not in a hysterical state anymore. And I'm very thankful that Ignatia helped me process, move through grief, move through shock, and help me process so I wasn't in this hysterical, paralyzed state like I was. All right. Chat with you guys soon. Let me know if you have questions. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And yeah, let me know your uses of Ignatia.